A warm summer evening in Manhattan, where the prestigious Windsor Grand Hotel stands tall, its golden lights twinkling against the twilight sky. The marble floors shine like mirrors, and crystal chandeliers cast elegant shadows across the lobby. But tonight, something extraordinary is about to unfold. A story that would shake the foundations of this 150-year-old establishment. Jasmine Carter arrives at the hotel's entrance, her designer briefcase in hand, and her Harvard business degree tucked away in her impressive resume. Having just closed a $500 million tech deal, she's looking forward to a quiet evening of celebration. Her dark curls are perfectly styled, and her tailored suit speaks of success, yet the front desk clerk barely glances up from his computer. "I'm sorry, we're fully booked," he says dismissively, despite the clearly visible vacancies sign glowing behind him. Jasmine notices another guest, who walked in moments after her, being handed a room key with a warm smile. She's seen this before, that familiar sting of discrimination wrapped in polite excuses. What the clerk doesn't know is that Jasmine isn't just any guest. As the CEO of one of the fastest-growing investment firms in the country, she's been quietly studying the hospitality market for months. The Windsor Grand, with its rich history and prime location, had caught her eye long before this evening, not just as a place to stay, but as her next business acquisition. 2 weeks later, the hotel's board of directors sits in their monthly meeting, discussing declining revenues and renovation needs. The large mahogany doors swing open, and in walks Jasmine Carter, not as a guest this time, but as their new owner. The same clerk who turned her away now stands in the corner of the room, his face pale with recognition. But Jasmine isn't here for revenge. This self-made billionaire has bigger plans. "Gentlemen," she begins, unfolding the blueprint for a revolutionary change in the hotel industry. The Windsor Grand is about to become a symbol of true hospitality, where every guest, regardless of their appearance, is treated like royalty. The story of what happened next would become legendary in hospitality circles. But more importantly, it would spark a conversation about change, prejudice, and the power of rising above it with grace and purpose. Because sometimes, the best response to discrimination isn't anger, it's excellence. This is just the beginning of how one woman turned a moment of humiliation into a movement of transformation. And trust me, the changes she's about to bring to the Windsor Grand will leave you speechless. Welcome to the story of Jasmine Carter, the woman who didn't just break through the glass ceiling. She bought the whole building. Stay tuned to discover how this remarkable tale unfolds, and how one evening of discrimination led to a revolution in one of New York's most iconic hotels. How does a single act of prejudice transform into a powerful story of triumph? What happens when underestimation meets unshakable determination? Get ready to witness a masterclass in turning obstacles into opportunities as we dive deeper into this incredible journey of resilience, success, and sweet justice served with a smile. But first, let me take you back to that fateful evening at the Windsor Grand, where our story begins. Let's rewind 6 months before that pivotal evening at the Windsor Grand. Jasmine Carter sat in her corner office on the 45th floor of a sleek Manhattan skyscraper, reviewing market reports scattered across her desk. Coffee had long gone cold, but she barely noticed. Her mind was focused on one goal: disrupting the luxury hotel industry that had remained unchanged for decades. Growing up in a modest household in Chicago, Jasmine learned early on that success required more than just hard work. Her mother, a high school teacher, always told her, "Baby, you'll have to be twice as good to get half as far." Those words echoed in her mind as she climbed the corporate ladder, earned her MBA, and eventually founded Carter Investment Group. What the business world saw as her meteoric rise was actually 15 years of calculated moves, sleepless nights, and countless doors slammed in her face. But Jasmine had a gift. She could turn every rejection into fuel for her next big move. Now, at 38, she managed a portfolio worth billions, yet something was missing. She wanted to create change that went beyond profit margins. The Windsor Grand first caught her attention during a casual conversation with her mentor, Richard Thompson, over lunch. "The old girl's losing her shine," he'd said, referring to the hotel. "Board's looking to sell, but quietly, they're worried about their reputation." Jasmine's interest was piqued, not just by the business opportunity, but by the hotel's history. Built in 1873, the Windsor Grand had hosted presidents, royalty, and Hollywood stars. Its walls held stories of both grandeur and shame, from hosting groundbreaking civil rights meetings in the 1960s to facing accusations of discriminatory practices in recent years. Despite its prestigious address, the hotel's reputation had been slipping, along with its revenues. Jasmine spent months studying the hotel's financials, guest reviews, and management structure. She noticed a pattern of complaints from minority guests about subtle discrimination, nothing blatant enough to make headlines, but persistent enough to raise concerns. The board had swept these issues under their expensive Persian rugs, but Jasmine saw an opportunity for meaningful change. What she didn't plan was to experience that discrimination firsthand. That evening, when she walked into the Windsor Grand, she wasn't testing their service. She genuinely needed a room after a late meeting. The dismissive treatment she received wasn't just personal, it confirmed everything her research had suggested. Standing on the sidewalk outside the hotel that night, Jasmine made a phone call. "Richard, remember our conversation about the Windsor Grand? I'm ready to move forward." Within hours, her team began executing a plan months in the making. Through a series of strategic moves and shell companies, they quietly acquired shares without alerting the market to their true buyer. But Jasmine's vision went far beyond a simple takeover. In her briefcase that day she was turned away lay the blueprints for a complete reinvention of the Windsor Grand. She planned to preserve its historic charm while transforming it into a beacon of modern inclusivity. Every detail, from staff training to marketing materials, would reflect a new era of hospitality. The morning of the board meeting, Jasmine stood before her bathroom mirror, adjusting her pearl necklace, a graduation gift from her mother. "Today, we make history," she whispered to her reflection. What awaited her in that boardroom wasn't just a business transaction. It was a chance to challenge decades of ingrained prejudice with grace and strategic brilliance. As she walked through the hotel's grand lobby toward the boardroom, she noticed the same clerk who had turned her away. He was helping an elderly couple with their bags, completely unaware that his world was about to change. Jasmine didn't plan to fire him. No, she had something far more powerful in mind. The board members' faces as she walked into that meeting told a story of their own. Confusion turned to recognition, then to understanding as their new reality sank in. What happened in that boardroom, and how Jasmine chose to wield her newfound power, would prove to be even more remarkable than the acquisition itself. The true test of leadership isn't just in acquiring power, it's in how you use it. And Jasmine Carter was about to show the world exactly what kind of leader she was. But before we dive into the extraordinary changes she implemented at the Windsor Grand, let's explore the series of events that led to this moment and the surprising allies she found along the way. Because sometimes, the most powerful transformations come from the most unexpected places. As Jasmine settled into her new role as owner of the Windsor Grand, she discovered that changing a culture was far more challenging than changing ownership papers. The morning after the board meeting, she walked through the hotel's ornate corridors, not as a visitor, but as someone carrying the weight of its future on her shoulders. Her first order of business was meeting with James Parker, the front desk clerk who had turned her away. Rather than firing him, she invited him to her office, the same luxurious space where previous owners had sat for generations. James entered nervously, his usual confidence replaced by visible anxiety. "Do you remember me?" Jasmine asked, keeping her voice gentle but firm. The recognition in his eyes spoke volumes. What happened next surprised everyone. Instead of reprimanding him, she offered him a chance at redemption. "I want you to help me transform this hotel," she said. "You know firsthand where we're failing. Who better to help fix it?" This unexpected move sent ripples through the hotel staff. Some embraced the change, like Maria Rodriguez, the head of housekeeping, who had witnessed countless instances of subtle discrimination during her 15 years of service. Others, like Charles Montgomery, the long-standing general manager, resisted what he called unnecessary changes to a perfectly functional system. Behind the scenes, Jasmine faced another battle. Several high-profile regular guests threatened to take their business elsewhere, uncomfortable with the changes she was implementing. The hotel's booking numbers temporarily dipped, and whispers of doubt echoed through the marble halls. But Jasmine had anticipated this resistance. It was all part of her larger plan. She introduced a revolutionary training program, bringing in experts in diversity and inclusion, but with a twist. Instead of typical corporate workshops, she organized storytelling sessions where guests and staff shared their experiences. James, now part of the leadership team, shared his own journey of confronting and overcoming his unconscious biases. The media caught wind of the story, but not everyone painted it in a positive light. Some business publications questioned whether her social experiment would doom the historic hotel. Others praised her innovative approach to hospitality management. Through it all, Jasmine maintained her focus on the long-term vision. One particularly challenging moment came when a group of influential business leaders canceled their annual conference booking, a tradition at the Windsor Grand for over 30 years. The board members who had remained after the takeover saw this as confirmation of their fears. But what they didn't know was that Jasmine had already been in talks with a major tech company looking for a venue that aligned with their values of diversity and innovation. Charles Montgomery's resistance reached a breaking point when Jasmine announced plans to renovate the hotel's famous Oak Room restaurant. The renovation would honor the hotel's history while making it more welcoming to a diverse clientele. "You're destroying tradition," he argued during a heated meeting. Jasmine's response was measured but powerful. "We're not destroying tradition, we're expanding it to include everyone." As these changes unfolded, an unexpected ally emerged. Elizabeth Windsor, the great-granddaughter of the hotel's original owner, reached out to Jasmine. Over tea in the hotel's newly renovated lounge, Elizabeth shared stories of her great-grandfather's original vision for the hotel, a vision that, surprisingly, aligned with many of Jasmine's goals. But just as things seemed to be taking a positive turn, an anonymous source leaked documents to the press, suggesting financial irregularities in Jasmine's acquisition of the hotel. The timing wasn't coincidental, and the fingerprints of those resistant to change were all over it. This wasn't just about a hotel anymore, it was about something much bigger. The real question wasn't just about saving a hotel's reputation or implementing new policies. It was about whether one woman's vision could challenge and change a system that had been in place for over a century. As pressure mounted from all sides, Jasmine found herself at a crossroads that would define not just her legacy, but the future of the Windsor Grand itself. What happened next would not only silence her critics, but would also redefine luxury hospitality for generations to come. But first, Jasmine had to face her biggest challenge yet, one that would test everything she had built and believed in. The story was far from over, and the most dramatic chapters were yet to unfold. Because sometimes, the greatest victories come just when everything seems lost, and the truest allies emerge from the most unexpected places. The leaked documents hit the media like a storm on a quiet morning. Headlines questioned everything from Jasmine's acquisition methods to her true intentions for the Windsor Grand. As she sat in her office, watching the sunrise paint Manhattan's skyline in shades of gold, her phone wouldn't stop buzzing with calls from reporters, investors, and concerned board members. But it wasn't the allegations that troubled her most. It was the signature style of the leaked documents. She recognized the formatting, the specific details highlighted, the careful omissions. Only someone with intimate knowledge of the hotel's operations could have compiled this information so meticulously. The call she dreaded most came from Richard Thompson, her mentor. "They're saying you manipulated the stock price, Jasmine." His voice carried genuine concern. "The SEC is asking questions. This could undo everything you built." She could hear what he wasn't saying. Not just the hotel was at stake, but her entire business empire. The validation she'd fought so hard to earn was hanging by a thread. Meanwhile, the hotel's daily operations became a battlefield of subtle resistance. Reservations mysteriously disappeared from the system. Long-time staff members called in sick simultaneously. Small but crucial details were overlooked during important events. Someone was orchestrating chaos, trying to prove that her leadership was failing. James Parker, the former desk clerk turned ally, noticed something odd in the old booking records. "Miss Carter," he said one evening, placing a stack of files on her desk, "I think you need to see this." The records revealed a pattern of discriminatory pricing and room assignments spanning years, carefully hidden within the hotel's complex booking system. More importantly, they showed who had access to this information and who had the most to lose if it came to light. Elizabeth Windsor proved invaluable during this crisis. Her family name still carried weight in certain circles, and she wasn't afraid to use it. Together, they began connecting dots that painted a disturbing picture. The attack on Jasmine wasn't just about preserving tradition. It was about protecting secrets that went back decades. The turning point came during the hotel's centennial celebration gala. Despite the controversy, or perhaps because of it, the event was fully booked. New York's elite, media, and curious onlookers all gathered to witness what many expected to be either Jasmine's triumph or her downfall. The tension in the grand ballroom was palpable. Charles Montgomery moved through the crowd with practiced ease, shaking hands and sharing knowing looks with longtime patrons. But his confident smile faltered when he saw Maria Rodriguez, the head of housekeeping, deep in conversation with several board members. She was holding a worn leather ledger, one that hadn't seen the light of day in years. As Jasmine prepared to address the gathered crowd, her team was quietly piecing together the final elements of a counter-strategy months in the making. The evidence they had gathered wasn't just about discrimination. It revealed a complex web of financial misconduct that made the allegations against her look trivial in comparison. The lights dimmed in the ballroom, and a hush fell over the crowd. Jasmine stood at the podium, elegant in a deep blue gown that had belonged to her mother. The same pearl necklace she wore the day she acquired the hotel graced her neck. But before she could speak, there was a commotion at the back of the room. Federal agents quietly entered through the service doors. Their presence wasn't immediately noticed by most guests, but those who had orchestrated the campaign against Jasmine saw them. The color drained from Charles Montgomery's face as he recognized one of the agents, someone he thought he had paid off years ago. Jasmine gripped the podium, her prepared speech suddenly feeling inadequate for what was about to unfold. The next few minutes would either vindicate her vision for the Windsor Grand or destroy everything she had worked for. The truth about who had leaked those documents, and why, was about to come to light. But as she looked out over the crowd, she saw more than just the faces of New York's elite. She saw James, standing tall despite the pressure he'd endured. Maria, clutching that revealing ledger. Elizabeth, whose support had proved invaluable. And scattered throughout the room, the hotel staff who had believed in her vision of change. The truth she was about to reveal would shake the Windsor Grand to its foundations. But sometimes she thought you need to shake things up to build them back stronger. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak, her voice steady despite the chaos about to unfold. The room held its breath, unaware that the next few minutes would not just change the hotel's future, but would expose a decades-old system of corruption that went far beyond simple discrimination. The real story of the Windsor Grand was about to be told. "Good evening," Jasmine began, her voice carrying through the hushed ballroom. "The Windsor Grand has always been more than just a hotel." She paused, noting Charles Montgomery slipping toward the side exit. But before he could reach it, two federal agents smoothly stepped into his path. The crowd, still oblivious to the drama unfolding, waited for her next words. Then, unexpectedly, the lights went out. The backup generators, which should have kicked in immediately, remained silent. In the darkness, scattered gasps and nervous laughter echoed off the ornate walls. This wasn't part of Jasmine's plan. Someone had manually overridden the hotel's electrical system, a system that had recently been modernized under her direction. When emergency lights finally flickered on, casting an eerie glow across the ballroom, Charles Montgomery was gone, but so was Maria Rodriguez, along with the leather ledger containing decades of evidence. Jasmine's heart raced. This wasn't just about stopping her speech anymore. Someone was desperate enough to resort to extreme measures. James Parker's voice crackled over her earpiece. "Miss Carter, the security footage from the past hour has been wiped clean. This was planned." Then, more urgently, "And there's something else. Someone's accessing the hotel's financial servers right now, attempting to transfer funds offshore." Elizabeth Windsor, who had been quietly observing from near the stage, suddenly stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen," her aristocratic voice commanded attention, "what you're about to witness isn't just about the Windsor Grand. It's about a conspiracy that reaches into the highest levels of New York's hospitality industry." The crowd buzzed with confusion and interest. Phones lit up the dimmed room as guests began recording. This was no longer just another charity gala, they were witnessing something historic. But Jasmine knew they were racing against time. Somewhere in the building, years of evidence was potentially being destroyed. Through her earpiece, Jasmine heard her security team coordinating with federal agents. They were sweeping the hotel floor by floor, but the Windsor Grand was massive, with numerous secret passages and service corridors dating back to its Prohibition-era days. Charles Montgomery, having managed the hotel for 20 years, knew every hidden corner. Then came another surprise. Richard Thompson, Jasmine's mentor, stepped onto the stage. His face was grave. Jasmine, he said, not bothering to whisper, there's something you need to know. The original documents about the hotel's ownership, they weren't what we thought. The room fell silent, hanging on every word. The Windsor Grand, Richard continued, was actually built with money from, but before he could finish, a loud explosion rocked the building. It came from the direction of the hotel's historic archives room, 3 floors below. Smoke began to seep through the ventilation system. Panic threatened to break out, but Jasmine's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone, please remain calm and proceed to the exits. As guests were evacuated, she noticed something curious. Several of the hotel's longest-serving board members weren't rushing to leave. Instead, they were exchanging knowing looks, almost as if. James' voice returned to her earpiece. Ms. Carter, we found Maria. She's safe, and she still has the ledger. But there's more. She says the explosion wasn't meant to destroy evidence. It was meant to create a diversion. The real target is in your office safe. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The leaked documents, the power outage, the explosion. They weren't separate attacks. They were all part of an elaborate plan to protect something hidden in the hotel since its founding. Something worth destroying reputations for. Something that could change not just the Windsor Grand's future, but its entire history. As fire trucks wailed in the distance and smoke continued to billow through the historic hotel, Jasmine made a decision that would either save everything she built or destroy it completely. She had to get to her office before them, but as she turned to leave the ballroom, she found herself face to face with someone she never expected to see. Someone whose presence changed everything she thought she knew about the Windsor Grand's true ownership. The real story was about to unfold, and it was far bigger than a tale of discrimination or revenge. It was about a secret that had shaped New York's power structure for over a century. And now, with the hotel literally and figuratively burning around them, the truth was finally ready to emerge. Standing before Jasmine was Eleanor Windsor, Elizabeth's 92-year-old grandmother and the true matriarch of the Windsor family. Despite the chaos, she stood perfectly composed, holding an ancient brass key in her weathered hands. "My dear," she said, her voice steady, "there's something in your office that belongs to both of us." As they hurried through the smoke-filled corridors, Eleanor revealed a truth that had been buried for generations. The Windsor Grand wasn't originally built by her grandfather, as history claimed. It was built by Jasmine's great-great-grandmother, Sarah Carter, a freed slave who had amassed a fortune but couldn't own property in her own name in 1873. The Windsor family had acted as frontmen, holding the hotel in trust until it could be rightfully returned. The brass key Eleanor carried opened the hidden compartment behind Jasmine's office safe, a space that had waited 150 years for this moment. Inside lay the original deed, along with Sarah Carter's journals and a collection of gold coins that had seeded the hotel's construction. Charles Montgomery had discovered this truth during renovation work, leading to his desperate attempts to maintain control. But the story didn't end there. As federal agents apprehended Montgomery trying to escape through the hotel's wine cellar, Maria Rodriguez appeared with the leather ledger. Its contents revealed more than just discrimination. It exposed a century-old network of powerful families who had used the hotel to hide their secrets and protect their interests. The explosion, it turned out, had been Montgomery's last-ditch effort to destroy evidence of years of blackmail and corruption. But he hadn't counted on Maria, who had spent 15 years quietly documenting every suspicious conversation and transaction she witnessed while cleaning the hotel's most prestigious suites. James Parker, monitoring the security feeds, spotted something crucial. The hotel's computer system showed a massive data transfer in progress, decades of hidden accounts and transactions being erased. But James had already backed up everything the moment he discovered the pattern in the old booking records. His redemption was complete. Elizabeth Windsor stepped forward, addressing the gathered media outside the hotel. "The Windsor Grand was built on a lie," she announced, "but will be reborn in truth." She publicly transferred her family's shares to Jasmine, acknowledging the hotel's rightful ownership after 150 years. The smoke cleared to reveal more than just structural damage. Old paintings, damaged by the heat, peeled away to expose hidden African-American art pieces from the 1800s. The hotel's walls had literally been hiding its true history. Sarah Carter, it seemed, had left her mark everywhere, waiting for future generations to discover it. Jasmine stood in the hotel's lobby as emergency crews finished their work. The chandelier that had witnessed her rejection months ago now illuminated a very different scene. The same desk where she had been turned away would now display Sarah Carter's portrait. But there was one final surprise left. Eleanor Windsor handed Jasmine a letter, yellowed with age. It was from Sarah Carter, addressed to her future descendant. To the one who reclaims our legacy. The Windsor Grand was never just a hotel. It was built as a testament to what we can achieve when we rise above those who would deny us our place. Its true wealth lies not in its walls, but in its power to change hearts and open doors for all who follow. The media called it the story of the year, a tale of discrimination transformed into triumph, of hidden history brought to light, of justice served not through revenge but through truth. The hotel's bookings soared as people from around the world wanted to be part of its reborn legacy. Charles Montgomery and his conspirators faced federal charges, but Jasmine ensured that the hotel's transformation focused on reconciliation rather than retribution. The Windsor Grand instituted a foundation in Sarah Carter's name, providing hospitality management scholarships to minority students. As Jasmine prepared for the hotel's grand reopening, she found James Parker training a new group of staff. "Welcome to the Windsor Grand," he was saying, "where everyone's story matters." She smiled, knowing that her great-great-grandmother would be proud. The story did more than just change a hotel. It challenged the hospitality industry's status quo nationwide. Other establishments began examining their own histories and policies. The Windsor Grand became a symbol not just of luxury, but of transformation and truth. And so, the hotel that once turned away a black female billionaire became a beacon of change, proving that sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination isn't just success, it's uncovering truth and creating space for others to succeed too. But perhaps the most poetic justice was this. The desk clerk who had turned Jasmine away now played a crucial role in training every new employee, sharing his own story of transformation. Because at the Windsor Grand, every guest's arrival now marked the beginning of a new chapter in a story 150 years in the making. 1 year later, the Windsor Grand's lobby buzzed with a different kind of energy. Where stiff formality once ruled, genuine warmth filled the air. Guests from all walks of life moved through the spectacular space, admiring the newly restored African-American artwork that now proudly adorned the walls, each piece telling a part of Sarah Carter's hidden legacy. In what used to be Charles Montgomery's office, now transformed into a small museum, visitors could read Sarah Carter's journals and learn about the remarkable woman who had dreamed of building a place where everyone would be welcomed with dignity. School groups regularly toured the space, learning about both the darker chapters of the hotel's past and its inspiring transformation. Maria Rodriguez, now the hotel's executive director of operations, had implemented revolutionary changes in staff policies. The housekeeping staff received fair wages, comprehensive benefits, and clear paths to advancement. Her leather ledger, which had helped expose decades of corruption, was displayed in a glass case, a reminder that justice often comes from unexpected places. James Parker's journey from prejudiced desk clerk to chief of guest relations became a story that training programs across the country sought to learn from. He traveled to hospitality conferences, sharing how confronting his own biases had transformed not just his career, but his entire worldview. Change, he would say, begins with honest self-reflection. Elizabeth and Eleanor Windsor remained closely involved with the hotel, not as owners but as partners in its mission. Their candid acknowledgement of their family's complex role in the hotel's history earned respect and helped heal old wounds. The Windsor name now stood for transformation rather than tradition alone. On this particular evening, Jasmine Carter stood in the grand ballroom, watching the hotel's first annual Sarah Carter Scholarship Gala unfold. 50 promising students from underrepresented backgrounds would receive full scholarships to top hospitality management programs, along with guaranteed internships at the Windsor Grand. The hotel's revival had ripple effects throughout the industry. Other historic hotels began researching their own histories, uncovering and acknowledging uncomfortable truths. The Windsor Grand's transparent approach to confronting its past while building a more inclusive future became a case study in corporate transformation. Richard Thompson, Jasmine's mentor, smiled proudly from his table. He had watched her grow from an ambitious young entrepreneur into a leader who understood that true success meant creating opportunities for others. The teenage waitstaff serving hors d'oeuvres were part of a new youth training program, learning hospitality skills while earning above minimum wage. As Jasmine prepared to address the gala attendees, she touched the brass key that Eleanor had given her, now worn as a pendant, a constant reminder of Sarah Carter's legacy. The hotel's oldest employee, an 85-year-old doorman who had worked there for 6 decades, gave her a knowing nod. He had seen the hotel's entire journey, from exclusion to embrace. The Windsor Grand was built twice. Jasmine began her speech, first with bricks and mortar, but now with truth and purpose. My great-great-grandmother didn't just build a hotel. She built a dream of what hospitality could truly mean. Today, we're not just continuing her legacy, we're expanding it. The hotel that had once turned her away now stood as a testament to what happens when discrimination meets determination, when truth overcomes tradition, and when success is measured not just in profits but in positive change. The Windsor Grand had become more than just a luxury hotel. It was a living example of how confronting the past could create a better future. As the evening wound down, Jasmine walked through the lobby one last time. A young black girl, probably around 12, stood admiring Sarah Carter's portrait. "Do you own a hotel?" the girl asked her parents. "Not yet," they answered, smiling. Jasmine caught their eye and nodded. In that moment, she saw the next chapter of the Windsor Grand story beginning to unfold. Because sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't about getting even. It's about making sure that doors once closed are held open for generations to come. And at the Windsor Grand, every guest who walked through those doors now became part of a continuing story of transformation, truth, and triumph. The hotel's motto, inscribed in elegant gold letters above the entrance, said it all. Everyone's story matters here. And in the end, that was the greatest luxury the Windsor Grand had to offer, the space for every person to write their own chapter in its ongoing tale of change. As the city lights twinkled outside and the last guests departed, the Windsor Grand stood proud against the Manhattan skyline, no longer just a monument to the past, but a beacon lighting the way forward. Because sometimes, the most powerful stories aren't about endings at all, they're about new beginnings.